think a more alarming thing is that some of the authors of bills haven't read their bills. So when they present them, they don't know what's in them. If you ask them a question about certain language or lines or impact, and they don't know what you're talking about, and they have to go look at the bill and read it.
Tulsa Talks is the podcast that is inspiring people to have everyday meaningful conversations to gain perspective and help the world.
So, Michelle, you're a legislator.
Yes.
Help me understand what that means.
So I represent about 40,000 people, and my district is in North Tulsa. I have a little bit of West Tulsa as well, and half of Turley, a bit of Sperry and Owasso. And so I have the opportunity to try to pass legislation for the state. And then we also pass the budget for the state. So all of the state agencies, education, public safety, we do a budget every year and that we pass. And so we serve 2-year terms. So it's similar to the federal level of Congress, but it's for state specific. So we have a House and a Senate, and I serve on the House side.
And your background is educator?
Yes, I was a teacher for 10 years. I was an education support employee for 4 with Tulsa Public Schools that whole time.
And why did you feel the need to be in the state level?
Part of it was I got mad at being called a terrorist and indoctrinator and a groomer by our state superintendent. And I'm kind of a firm believer in, like, if you're going to talk about me, you should do it to my face. But also, I felt like there wasn't a voice like mine or that had like a similar lived experience of me and my neighbors and friends in the legislature. I felt like sometimes they were missing a significant perspective of a lot of people in Oklahomans that are just trying to work and make it and have a family and maybe aren't doing as well and have some struggles and still want to have the same quality of life as, you know, the billionaires out there and stuff. And so I talked to friends and family because I didn't want to be, you know, too egotistical and think, oh, well, I should do this. So I talked to people and said, you know, do I have skills and assets and like perspectives that would be beneficial to this? You know, should I venture out into this? And so I just want to help people, and I'm tired of like the game of politics. I want politics to work for people like it is supposed to. And I would like to see our politics being run by the people like it is supposed to be. You know, we say people's house, but that's not just like a joke. That is what it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to represent what my district wants. So that was kind of the motivation. I had been helping through education for all this time, and I was like, no, I want to help more people and more significantly. So that was kind of what got me into it.
Terrorist. Why would anybody label you as a terrorist?
You know, I don't know, but I will say it does make me feel very powerful, which is not always a feeling you have as a teacher. But, you know, I don't know. There's this rhetoric about, you know, teachers are indoctrinating and we're doing all this stuff. And, you know, I understand that people have values that they really believe are important. And I understand maybe your concern that like we're teaching them something. But if I could indoctrinate kids, they would wear deodorant and they would write their name on their paper and they would come to class on time. And if I can't get them to do that, I don't think I can fundamentally change their characters and their value systems that their parents are instilling every day. And I do not want to, because that diversity of thought is what's so great about this country and this state. There's all kinds of people that think and feel and believe all kinds of things. And who am I to tell the next person, you know, how they should believe? I can give you reasons why I believe that, but you're allowed to do what you want to do. And I am in the role as an educator. I am just trying to give you information and help you understand how to go out and also learn on your own beyond what I'm giving you and to be able to vet things. And that includes what I'm telling you. I very specifically did lessons with kids to have them critique me and make sure that they could find if I wasn't being honest with them, like, how do you know? And what can you look for? And so I think there's just a lack of trust between parents and teachers right now for a lot of reasons. And I don't think that it's really on parents and teachers. It very much to me feels like it's stoked by these outside groups, because for me, parents have always been a teammate. I need the parents' help to deal with their kids and to help them and to support them. And so to me also too, I think that it's part of that politics game. People need to be elected, and rhetoric and, divisiveness gets campaign dollars and gets people excited. Couldn't really tell you the science of why, and I'm sure there's been studies, but people rally behind that, and so it fills their coffers, and it's a performance for them. So it doesn't matter, who they harm. So they can say those things because, well, it's going to get me dollars and it's going to get me votes, and it doesn't matter that it's actually harming the people that I'm supposed to be working with.
What kind of people groups are the ones that stoke these people to seeing that? Painting people into a box and hating that box.
I think a lot of
standing against that box.
I think a lot of people they would answer that question and say like, oh, well, it's far right groups versus Republicans. And like, maybe so. But I think a more accurate term is these are just not good people or not nice people or kind people. They happen to be at the moment, that is their political philosophy is more right and it is more Republican. But I don't think that is the only thing, because I can talk to Republicans that disagree with those people. So it's not being Republican that puts you there. So these are people that are kind of in a category on their own. I think that there's a level of selfishness to it as well, because for all of the issues that they, say that we have, coming to the table and actually solving those issues isn't what they want to do. And so, to me, I think the best description would be selfish people is kind of where that's at, regardless of politics. If the left was doing it, if Democrats were doing it, it would still be just as selfish and just as problematic.
I had a conversation not too long ago with a fellow that's running for federal congressman position, and he said that Republicans and Democrats a lot of times don't sit down together. They're almost self-prohibited from that activity. And I don't understand how anything would work if you didn't have meaningful conversations.
Well, I will speak to my experience in the House. So it is a supermajority Republican. And so the reality of that is they don't have to talk to us. They can pass every single bill without a Democrat vote. They do not need us to get their bills passed if they can all agree. As the minority, we don't have that. So we have to work across the aisle. So we're forced to. Now, whether we would do that if we were the supermajority, I don't know. I can speak for me personally. I would.
The Republicans do allow you guys to sit and have meaningful conversations most of the time?
No, they don't really include us. I won't say that they don't allow per se. I mean, we are able to debate and talk on the floor, but we caucus separately. So you meet with your caucus prior to the week starting or whatever, and you kind of go over the bills that your members are pushing and that you really want to get across, issues that you're seeing, things like that. You work together. You're kind of on a semi-team. And then when you get out onto the floor, we're all together, but we don't meet all together. So the budget that was passed this year, I was on my way to Oklahoma City when I got a text message asking me a question about the budget. I did not know we had a budget. And I brought this up on the floor, and one of the things said, well, we had open office hours and all this time. And that is true. And I want to be clear that from what I was told, the involvement that we had this year in the budget was more than we've had in previous years, which is a little alarming to me because it really wasn't much. So they did have these open office hours, but we didn't come to the table and go over this budget and then it was released. The Republicans got together and put together this budget, released it to the media, and then came and met with us and said, here's what's in the budget. And we were able to ask questions. And so and I don't want to fault the current Republicans because this is just politics. This is how it's been done. And that's why I said I don't know if the Democrats had the supermajority, if they would be any better, because that is part of partisan politics, which kind of makes things difficult for me because, yes, I'm a Democrat and that's like my values, but I try very hard to work for the people that I represent, and those are Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Independents, and people that don't care about politics at all. And I need to be aware of all of them, and I'm serving all of them. And so I try to remind myself of that, and that I am not working across the aisle so that I can say, oh, I'm a good person, I worked across the aisle. No, I'm working across the aisle because I need to get things done for those people, and I need to be able to make progress for them, and I need to be able to represent them. And if I don't work across the aisle, what am I there for? And regardless of what we legislate, it doesn't just impact my district, it impacts the entire state. So if I'm not talking to those other representatives across the aisle, I'm missing the issues that they have in their districts. And I may think something is really, really great because I'm in Tulsa, a metro area, and this is wonderful, but it might be really detrimental to our farmers out in the Panhandle. And if I don't go talk to the rep from the Panhandle, how am I going to know that? Am I going to drive out to the Panhandle and go talk to a bunch of people that have never seen me before and don't know anything about me? No. They're going to be like, who are you? But I can go talk to who they've elected to represent them. And I can say, hey, what do you think of this? Is this harmful for you guys? And I've done that several times this year because I do not know agriculture. So I go over to those reps and I go, hey, is this going to be good for farmers, or is this going to be a problem? Like, help me understand this issue. And so, yeah, we don't have this huge collaborative effort. There are pockets where we do. There are certain committee chairs that are more accommodating, and so they do reach across the aisle a lot more. But there are also times where they're not allowed to. Leadership will tell them, no, don't, like, you can't participate in that. Or it's very hard to get a bill across the line if it has a Democrat rep and a Democrat senator. You almost always have to have a mix in order to get it through, because it's just it will be voted on party lines. So it's not really as collaborative as we could be, which is unfortunate for the people we represent.
It's amazing that there are Democrats and Republicans to me, and that's hard stance like that exists, because I say that we're all important, and yeah, we elect from the choices that we have, and it is a two-party country. I don't know how it could be done better, but it sure seems like there would be a viable option to get pride out of the way so that we could all live more harmoniously. I know there are good ideas from both sides of the aisle that don't get addressed because of that. Yeah,
absolutely. I think part of it, the government has to be run by the people again. We've been a lot.
But how do you do that with two parties?
I think some of it is incumbent on leaderships within the parties themselves, which those are elected by members. So sometimes you got to say, okay, that's what people wanted. But as elected officials, I think it's incumbent on us to walk the walk, lead by example. I don't go around to my colleagues and go, well, you're not doing town halls and you're not doing this and you're not doing that. I just go out in my district and do it. And so that way, hopefully, the message gets out there that when you elect somebody, this is an option that you can have. You can have a person who is accessible and available and is doing these town halls and is having conversations with you and is responsive to what you want. I voted the way my district wanted to, and I disagreed with it. I didn't like it. I hated the vote. It was for a couple of nurse practitioner bills that would have increased healthcare access. But the emails that I got from my district said, no, don't do that. And I said, okay, dang it.
Was that a real pulse of your community, or was that just activists?
It was not the real pulse of the community, but this is where the issue is. At the time that happened, my district wasn't being very responsive to me. I was having town halls, but they haven't been well attended. And that's okay, because I realize that I'm new and I've got to develop trust with my district. And I've got to get the message out there, and people are busy. Absolutely. So I don't fault them. So it was not the pulse of my entire district for sure. And I know if it had been kind of made known or gotten around, I probably wouldn't have gotten emails. But people are so hands off. They elect us and they trust us to go do our jobs, which is great to a degree. But in that moment, it sucked, because on one bill, I only had one email, and on the other bill, I only had 4. But that one email said no. And then those 3 of the 4 said vote no. And so I said, okay, I do not have the information to be able to go back to those people and explain why I didn't do what they wanted me to do. So I have to do what they've asked me to do. And I was very grateful that those bills ended up coming back onto the House floor. And I was given the data that I needed to be able to fully explain why I did not vote the way I was asked to vote, the rationale, and I could stand by that. And not to say it wouldn't have upset people, but I could be comfortable that if that is an issue for you and that means you choose somebody else next election, I respect that, understand, but here's the rationale why I did that, because I was able to vote for them then. And the day after we had that original vote, I was presenting the nurse of the day. So I've just voted down something that would make nurse practitioners' lives easier. And then here I am standing with a nurse who goes, about those bills. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I had to vote no, but I was able to explain it to her. And, obviously she wasn't happy that I voted no, but she was like, oh, I can understand that. I respect that. That's unfortunate. And I told her, though, I said, please have people reach out to me before those things come up for a vote, because I'm not a nurse or a doctor. That's not my area of expertise. And so I have to have the information to explain my vote. And so people reaching out to us is one, but they are busy, and I understand that. I'm working on plans to try to identify people in the district that can kind of help to keep an eye on things and kind of communicate that out, because the system's very bulky and it's hard to keep up. We filed like 3,000 bills. We passed over 500 plus like 47 vetoes. That is a lot of information to keep up with. And even I am not going to be able to tell everybody about all of these 3,000 bills. So I'm working on...
Can you read all 3,000 bills?
No, you cannot. And that's another problem. So when we get the way that I prioritize bills, because no, you cannot read all of them. The final bills are filed in January, about mid-January. And as a caucus, we try to keep each other in the loop and, communicate about bills. But what you end up having to do is prioritize. So you prioritize what's going to be presented in your committee that you're going to have to vote on first. So you definitely go and you read those. And thankfully, those are just a few at a time, but it varies.
Are these able to be read to you instead of you having to physically read them?
Potentially, but I'm going to be able to keep up with it much better if I read the words myself. I'm not as good with being read to. It's harder for me to keep the information. So, theoretically, you could have somebody read to you. And we have policy staff and we have assistants and a legal department and a research department that we can get information. Yeah. But
I like audiobooks.
Yeah, some people do. I think I need to try them sped up, and then I would be able to do it more.
Yeah.
I think that
I read it or I listen to it 2 or 3 times.
That's probably what I need to do, and I just haven't tried that yet.
And I find something else to fidget with at the same time.
Yes.
So I listen to it 2 or 3 times speed, and then I also find something to do while I'm doing that. Yeah, and it really engages me better. A lot of people around me are like, "That's nuts. There's no way." But that's how my body works.
Yeah. I talked to a rep that he just put, because they're in PDFs, and he just put it into a reader and would have them read to him on the way to the Capitol. And I was driving 12 hours a week. I wish I could have done that and been able to keep up with stuff. But I need to write notes or do something, not just have my hands on the wheel. But and so then we would get, who knows when you get the agenda? I might get an agenda at 7 p.m. with 80 bills on it, and we're going to gavel in at 9:30 in the morning. So you really can't read them preemptively. And so that's why I want to try to find some people in the community that can maybe watch one committee, because I'm on 4 committees. And so I'm attending those committees, plus everybody else is on 4 committees, and I can't watch all of their committees all the time. But I'm hoping I can maybe find some people in the community that have the time, either in real time or, in the evening, that they can pull up the committee meeting and they can highlight those bills that I need to have an eye on, or they can say, hey, when this bill came up, there were tons of questions from both sides. You might want to pay attention. Or, hey, this bill, both sides, nobody asked a question, fully support it, move on. And that helps me to kind of prioritize and know where there might be issues, or where something might be really good too, because that was another issue. Sometimes there were good bills that I would have loved to champion, but they didn't get onto my radar until they were on that agenda, because you never know what bills are going to be heard until you get that agenda. And that doesn't even have to be the bills that you hear. I've been on the floor, and we're going to gavel in at 1:00. We start at 1 and we get an email at 1:15 saying, hey, I'm adding these bills to today's agenda.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, cool. So then so if you see us on the floor and we have our computers open or we're on our phones, just know that 9 times out of 10, we are emailing people, or we're looking up things, or we're reading the bills, or we're texting people. You know, I've been in the middle of something and been like, hey, electrical workers union, is this bill on licensing? Do you guys need this, not need this? I understand the language, but I need to know the impact for you. What does this help? Because I think it does, but I want to be sure. You know, what is you guys experiencing? And thankfully they texted me back and was like, nope, that is good for us. That will help us get more apprentice electricians. It's perfect. Great. And I was like, okay, cool. And that way, not only am I hearing from the author who, of course, you know, you wrote the bill, you think it's great, but I need to know, is it actually good for my people and for the people of Oklahoma? So keeping up with everything, reading everything is a challenge. I think a more alarming thing is that some of the authors of bills haven't read their bills. So when they present them, they don't know what's in them. If you ask them a question about certain language or lines or impact, and they don't know what you're talking about, and they have to go look at the bill and read it. And a lot of times their answer is still, I don't know. That's more terrifying to me.
So they have ghostwriters.
Yes. So organizations can give you legislation to run. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, and that's totally okay. Private citizens can write things. Also, too, we don't write our own bills. We determine kind of what we want the bill to do, and we send it's assigned to a legal department. So an attorney is writing that up so that the language is legal. That doesn't mean the idea is legal, though. And what I found out is that whatever you send them, they will write it up for you. And that doesn't mean that it's constitutional, and that doesn't mean that's okay. Now, all of the ones that I wrote, if there were any issues, they responded back to me and said, well, if you do this, it's a problem, or this. And so then I was able to say, oh, okay, well, let's do this instead. Or if we change this wording to this or to this department, does that make it allowable? That type of thing. But we've seen a lot of legal challenges to some of our legislation. So I don't know that everybody's having that nuanced conversation. So we don't write our own bills, although they send us the draft back, and you can ask for specific language. And so if you have something, you can give them that. And so I've done that with bills where they'll send me the draft and I'll go, well, can we make this sentence actually say this? Because that's what I really want in there. And what would be the impact of that? Does it make it a stronger bill? Does it weaken it? Like, am I giving you good language or not? But some of it is they've been given an entire piece of legislation from another organization, and they just file that language.
3,000 bills.
Mm-hmm. Between the House and Senate, yeah. 500
laws.
Mm-hmm.
How many words are typically speaking on each bill? What have you seen? A range? I'm sure it's a range, but... Oh,
a bill can be 2 pages to 80 pages. It just varies. It depends on what it is, whether it's new law. A lot of times you'll get a big piece of legislation. It'll be 80 pages, but that's because that's the existing statute. That's the whole law. But what the bill is actually doing is just changing a couple of places. And so so it's a big bill, but there's a small amount that you actually have to read for the change part. So it really can vary. It depends, but there can be some pretty lengthy ones.
500 new laws.
Mm-hmm.
How many laws are done away with? How many laws?
Oh, I mean, how many were repealed? How many did we repeal?
Over, how long has Oklahoma existed?
1907. So coming up on 120 years now.
And I'm sure there are quite a few laws.
Yes.
And some of them might be outdated for today's time.
Yes.
And seems like that will be cumbersome to go through and know what is in all of the law.
This is where I think that, my special interest people that are like really into niche things, if you know some obscure law that's on the books, reach out and let us know. There are times where we repeal laws, so we'll repeal it. And if you actually go look up some of our law, you'll see places where statute it still has to be listed, but it now shows repealed. And so there were a couple of things. There was a task force that hadn't met since like 2007 or something, but we had language on the books, so we got rid of that. And then sometimes there's departments or agencies that the name has changed or they no longer exist or the responsibility shifted somewhere, and there was legislation directing things to that department. So you have to file new legislation or amendments to existing legislation to go in and change that. You can't just say, well, this department doesn't exist anymore, we'll take it out. No, that has to come to a vote in the legislature to be taken out. So we do things like that as well, where we'll take some out or we'll change from this department to this department type of thing.
What are some key things that you are helping your community legislate? Or trying to help your community legislate?
So I have 4 interim studies that I've submitted. I think one of the heavier lifts that is not likely to happen in the next year, but that'll have to have some continuous conversations, is protections for minors in monetized online content. And I think that one is kind of hard because that is still very new. So you've got to bring people on board and explain it to them and help them kind of get the landscape of that. Another one that I think will be helpful is a plain language bill. The federal government passed one in 2010, and it basically made state agencies' websites, forms, and stuff have to be written in plain language, which makes it accessible for most people. Kind of like the newspaper is written at about a 6th to 8th grade reading level so that you're catching the most amount of people because everybody's skill level is different. And I think that would be helpful because it is kind of cumbersome sometimes to find resources or information. And if I can't find the information to help myself, then the state is not doing anything to, come and find me and give me the information. We're leaving resources on the table for folks, but we're leaving people in need. And I think that one is just a common sense one. We've already been working on modernizing our websites anyway. I don't think it is a huge endeavor to start trying to make the language more accessible. The biggest question there is about cost and implementation. Large agencies will easily be able to kind of do that work because they have a person dedicated to maintaining their websites and stuff like that. But our smaller agencies that only have just a couple of people, they would have to hire somebody to do that work potentially. So part of that conversation is like, how long is the implementation period to get people in compliance? Because the longer the period, then that alleviates some of that strain on smaller agencies, because then they could do a little bit of work here and here over time, and maybe they don't need to hire a new full-time person or something like that. Price transparency, so your taxes and fees being included in the sticker price. I think certainly with retail, grocery stores, that should be the norm at this point. We're printing off digital tickets. You're not having to go and mark the chalkboard or whatever every day to change the price, and things are fairly steady. You know what the taxes are going to be well in advance. You can calculate those out. And I think for me, it makes me spend more money because then I don't keep that kind of gap at the end of my budget to account for my math mistakes as I'm shopping. If I'm going, okay, this is going to be $473, I know it's going to be $473, not $473, and then whatever taxes. And I think that will help. And then there's another looking at whether or not we need to standardize the way that we classify our high school students by grade level. And those are from the bills that I presented that didn't make it out of committee. I've had conversations with different people throughout the district and some different issues. Education is always a big one. Healthcare access right now. Homelessness is a big one, but that's not typically a state issue. That's a city issue. And animal control are big in my district, which is also another that's not a state issue. It's a city issue. So I have some meetings that I'm working on planning for the fall so that I can have people come in and we can sit and talk about what legislation they would like to see. I'll have my existing bills that I previously wrote because those I can still run next year if my district is supportive of those. But I also want to hear what other things they actually want to implement. And that's kind of one of the challenges is that people come to you with a problem, not legislation. So you bring me a problem and now I've got to go talk to people and figure out, are we even allowed to legislate that? Is it a state controlled thing or is it federal or is it city or is it county? And then like how? And if it's an area that I'm not familiar with, I can talk to, unions if it's a worker issue, or I can talk to nonprofits or different state agencies and try to get that information. But my district is very quiet at the moment. We're working on kind of getting those lines of communication open. So it's not a lot of feedback from 72 at the moment, but we're working on it. And I'm trying to create opportunities for them to bring that stuff to me. So we'll kind of see what legislation is of interest as I get people to come out and have those conversations.
If you guys make the website and the writings, the law easier to understand for more people, and they actually participate in receiving those benefits, would that not cost the state a lot of money?
It could potentially, but we budget for that. So I have a meeting this week with DHS, and one of the conversations that I'm going to have with them is about what are we spending that we've allocated for benefits? Is there money being left on the table? Do we not have it? Like, what does that landscape look like? Because maybe there's not an issue. Maybe that information is getting into the right hands of everybody. And so the issue is that we have a gap of services we offer. I don't think so. I think we have a gap of services we offer, but I think part of the issue is just it's not getting to people. And so that'll be part of the conversation that I have. But if we offer a benefit and you qualify for the benefit, you should get the benefit, especially if you need the benefit. I mean, I think there's this weird idea that, like, if you're getting food stamps or Section 8 or any of these benefits, that like you've somehow like gamed the system and you've like come up on this freebie. And it's like, no, I would like to be financially stable enough that I do not qualify for food stamps and can also buy the groceries that if I qualify for food stamps, I could get. Like, I don't think people understand that I do not have enough money for food is why I get the food stamps. It's not because I'm just, living this lush existence on my SNAP benefits. And so, I think if that's where we are as a state, that we have that many people in need, well, I guess we need to figure out revenue so that we can pay for it. Alternatively, we could look at the causes of why so many people need those benefits, and we could address those. I think that's the solution, not to say, well, we don't want you to have the benefit. No, I want you to not have the need for the benefit. I want you to not have to ask for the benefit. I want you to get to a place where you're okay and you don't need that help and you're able to do it on your own. But until you get there, if I'm supposed to take care of people, then I should be providing that benefit.
There's a place in our economy that people make just enough to not qualify for those anymore. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, a lot of times they take a huge hit in income.
Yeah.
Why does that exist?
I think that as a society, we've decided that being poor is a moral failing. And so if you're poor, if you're struggling, well, you must have done something wrong or made the wrong decision, or you didn't go to the right college, or you didn't get into the right career. I mean, I hear it all the time with like education when we talk about our pay. It's like, well, you knew what you were getting into. Cool. I don't think that it's okay to treat people poorly just because they knew they were going to be treated poorly. That's a weird defense of that. And so I think that there's this idea that people that are poor or are struggling are not as good. And that's not everybody by far. But I don't think people understand all of the things that are beyond your control that can put you into those circumstances. I've gone without a meal so that my kids could eat. I have gathered up change to pay for a tank of gas. I've lived those experiences, and I can tell you that I was working my butt off. Like, I was doing everything that I could. I just it didn't come together for me for whatever reason. And I don't think people realize how expensive poverty is. That is like this common misconception. And it's like, okay, I'm poor. I just have just enough to get my basic needs met. Let's say I don't have money for good health insurance, and I'm lucky enough to qualify for Sooner Care. That's great. I go to the dentist. I need a root canal. Sooner Care doesn't cover that. They'll cover pulling the tooth, but they won't cover the root canal. So because I'm poor, I can lose a tooth, or I can pay thousands of dollars to get this root canal. Well, if I lose this tooth, depending on where it is, that might affect job chances because we know there's stigma about things like that. Might affect the way that I eat. So now I've got to decide, do I go into debt to maybe pay for this, or do I go without the tooth? A simple tire, going flat can be devastating. If I've got $5 in my account and I need a new tire that's $125, it doesn't matter how hard I'm working. I do not have it. And now I'm $120 in the hole, now $150 because we're going to pay that insufficient fund fee. And then whenever my check comes, now I'm short already because I was in the hole. And now my kid, fell and, broke their arm, or their last pair of jeans ripped a hole in them and they need a new pair. But I was already in the negative for what I needed to do just already. So anything on top of that. And so I think that it is a lack of understanding. I think it's a misconception. I also think it's somewhat of a fear, because if I'm not poor and I don't want to be, and I believe that it is a character flaw or a moral failing, then I can just be good and I won't have that problem. And so I'm going to make better decisions and I'm going to do the right things and I'll be okay. And it's like, no, actually any number of things. Most people be off work for a month and tell me what your bank account looks like. Get into a car accident and you total your car. What is your life like now? Most of us are so close to our entire life circumstances just completely changing. I mean, if you can go to the casino and a $10,000 win would significantly change your life, you're not as well off as you think. Yes. And I think about that all the time, because $10,000 that would be so nice. That would be great. I'd love to find a lotto ticket on the ground. But I don't think people think about that, because that's scary. And I don't want to think about that. I'm doing okay and I never want it to be me. We think the same thing about our health. And I've had so many reality checks of that now as an adult. When you're 12 or 13, you can jump off of anything, nothing hurts or whatever. Now it's like you get off the couch and it's like, oh, oops, that tweaked a little bit. Let me sit down, or I might need ice packers to somebody have some ibuprofen. And it's the same with our financial health. It is so tenuous. Anything for so many of us, one small thing could just totally change the trajectory of our life. And I think so many people don't realize that. I think that this idea that people have of homelessness is homeless under the bridge, mental illness, drug use. That is a vision of homelessness. There are people that have that life for sure. There's also homeless. I sleep in my car and I shower at the gym and I have a full-time job and I'm not in the counts that the city does, because I don't want to be perceived as homeless. I'm not homeless. I sleep in my car. There's also the homeless of I sleep on my friend's couch. So yes, I have someone's home that I go to, but it does not belong to me. And at any point in time, they could tell me to go. And so I think that there's a lack of awareness of things. We've got to pull back the curtain and people have to talk to people that are not like them and don't live their same life, because it is not what you think.
Yeah, Jesse, our production manager, happens to have people couch surfing in his house somewhat on a semi-regular basis. Mm-hmm. And we've had people doing that at our house as well. We happen to have a person in our guest house right now as we speak.
Yeah.
And I've been there. Yep. I've been a couch surfer, a car sleeper when I was 19, 20 years old.
Yep.
And it breaks my heart for people that are at any point in life discounting anybody else where they are in life. Yep. Because we're in this thing together, like it or not. That hurting person affects your life.
Absolutely.
And you could be that hurting person at any given time.
Absolutely. That's the thing is I think about my life as far as community. I have community with teachers. I have community with legislators. I have community within just regular friends group. But I have community within my neighborhood, within my city. It might not be the community that I interact with directly face to face all the time, but I am a part of that community. And so what I think about is, if my neighbor is starving, if my neighbor has nothing to lose and they're trying to survive, petty crimes don't seem that bad. You know,
you back somebody in a corner.
You back somebody into the corner.
And you'll see.
Why am I going to be mad that they came
reality.
out swinging? Like, because I'm going to tell you right now, if you think that I wouldn't steal to feed my kids if that was the only option that I had, I hope I never have to make that choice. But if my kid's life was dependent on me committing a crime, I'll do the time. It's fine.
But
I'm going to take care of my kids.
What's interesting to me is what we talked about earlier. There are programs and in place, maybe not accessible.
Exactly that. And so I think that it's important to not only have the programs, but you got to make sure that they get to people. If you have a good idea and it just sits up on a shelf, it's not a benefit to anybody. If you have a good program and it's 20 miles away from the people that need it, and they don't know that it's there and they don't have a way to get there, then your program doesn't matter. And that's the thing is I think there are lots of services out there. We haven't quite gotten to where everybody has access to them. I know the mayor, who is my predecessor, has a plan that will try to centralize some of that for homelessness. I know he's got a family and children department as well. So trying to do that. And I'm trying to do some of that. As a legislator, I keep a lot of data and information together so that I can try to disseminate that information to people and make those connections. But yeah, there are a lot of services that we just aren't getting people to. I also sometimes think that there are people that go into wanting to help and forget to listen a little bit first. I think, because I've done it as a teacher where I came into a scenario and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make this better, and this is how. And then I start trying to do that, and my students are like, yeah, we don't like this. This isn't like what you think it is. Whatever, this isn't beneficial. And I had to take a step back and go, okay, what am I missing? What's the problem? Oh, never thought of that. Cool, good idea. Probably should address that. And it's like, oh wow, I wanted to help you, but I didn't know what you needed, and so I tried to give you a prescription. And it was the wrong one, like that type of thing. And so hopefully we're getting to a place where people can kind of start to see that. I feel like I've had more conversations in the last 6 months with people that are seeing a more collective community and wanting to step into that than I have in the past, which is kind of odd considering all of the divisiveness that we're seeing in so many other ways. But I've had a lot of conversations with people that gives me some hope that there are a lot more people realizing, wait a minute, why are we fighting? We could do this together. And we can all have our own lanes, of course, and our own perspectives, but we don't have to be oppositional. We can be side by side. We can be, you're in front, I'm behind, whatever.
Collaborate through our differences.
Yeah.
To paint something beautiful together.
Yeah. Instead
of being divided.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you don't have to agree to work together either. That's not a requirement. It's not agreement. You have to be able to respect each other. You have to be able to work together, but you don't have to agree. And I have found a lot of places where I get people disagreeing with me is where I'm able to grow the most because they challenge me. I'm not perfect. And if you think, if somebody thinks that they're perfect and they have all the answers, I can tell them unequivocally without ever having met them, they are so wrong. Because none of us are. I have this much of the solution and somebody else has this, I just know what I know, and that's where my strengths are, and that's what I'm good at. That doesn't mean that's the only thing people need, and that does not mean that that's the only thing I can do either. I can make space for people. I can support people, and that doesn't mean that I have to agree with them. I don't agree with my own children sometimes. I still love them and support them, and then that's kind of the vibe is you don't have to agree to show respect and to make space for people. You don't get less because you allow somebody else to sit at the table.
But you won't get your way necessarily.
You won't get your way. But again, that's why I say that's that selfishness. Is it about your way or are you about doing what's right? Sometimes what is right isn't what you think it is.
And sometimes what's right isn't what the majority agree that it is as well.
That's true as well.
But we do live in a democratic republic.
We do. And so,
for better or for worse, we're here together till death do us part as a society.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can listen to each other respectfully and consider each other's perspectives, because we can grow with those conversations.
Absolutely.
So that we can live better cohesively.
Absolutely.
Even though we might disagree and we might not get our way, which our way might be the best way, but we still get to navigate this life together.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it takes time to like bring people on board with something. Maybe your way is the best way and it's the right way. Maybe it's uncomfortable for people, or maybe it's really foreign, or maybe it's complicated. So like maybe you got to do a little bit more work to kind of get people on board. If your way is that great, you should be able to show people and explain it to people and demonstrate it. And you won't get everybody. I'm never going to say that you'll always get everybody. But if your way is that good, I think that most of the time you should be able to kind of convince people that way. It might take some time, but you should be able to get people over to your side, because I think the majority of people at the core are good people.
I met a guy, you're talking about making it simple for people to understand and run with it. Met a guy not too long ago at a business meeting, networking event, that said, everybody that I interact with are not nearly as smart as I am. There's a bunch of stupid people out there. He actually said this, first time he ever met me. He said, because I have this great idea and nobody can understand it. I said, maybe you need to refine that vision so that people can understand it. Because maybe people are smarter than you think they are, and they don't want to digest themselves what you should digest for them.
Well, how smart are you if you can't make it palatable for your audience? You know, it's kind of a double-edged thing. You know, part of it, intelligence, is being able to read the situation and go, okay, you don't. I did that as a teacher. I'd explain something and I'm thinking I'm rocking and roll like, oh, this has got to make sense. And then I just have a bunch of blank stares and I'm like, I don't get this. Okay. I've had to check myself with that. I've had a lot of gut checks in the last, I'd say probably like 5 years, has been a lot of personal growth for me. And that's one of the things, because I used to kind of feel like that too. I'm like, oh, people are so dumb. And, you know, there are occasions where that thought comes to my mind, but I've realized like, it's not always that. Sometimes it's about access to information. Sometimes it's me, how I presented something. And also sometimes I'm just wrong. Maybe I just thought that was amazing and I'm just wrong, and that's okay. And so I've gotten to where I'm like, everybody doesn't know everything. I don't know everything. That's okay. And it takes all kinds. I've had toddlers teach me something I didn't know. So of course there are things that I don't know that adults could teach me. Like there's always something that you can gain from somebody. There's something that you know that they don't, but that they know and you don't. And it's kind of hard sometimes to check yourself, because sometimes you don't even realize it, especially if you're annoyed or frustrated by something. You might default to like, oh, everybody's stupid. And so it's like, well, are they though? Or are you not communicating well? Or did you not give people enough time? Or are you just wrong? And it's not as good an idea as you think it is. Because I thought I had an amazing idea. And I spent probably 3 or 4 days like putting it together. And I showed it to my friend and she was like, Michelle, no. And I was really upset.
But did you take that one no and run with that, or did you continue processing it?
I did, because she walked me through it, and I was like, "Oh, actually, it is a bad idea. Thank you for saving me the embarrassment." Okay. But
I mean, that can happen too, right?
That can happen too.
You can have a great idea and have it just spelled out so simply. Yes. You present it to the first 2 or 3 people, and they're like, no. And you are right.
I try to be careful, and I try not to be my own. Like, I try not to preemptively tell myself no. And when somebody else tells me no, I need to understand the logic of it. Because if you're just telling me no because you didn't have time to hear me, or you didn't really pay attention, or whatever, or you're not interested, or it wasn't for you, that I don't need that feedback. I need genuine feedback. And so, no, in that case, my friend was like walking me through these big gaping holes that I had missed in my excitement. And I was like, oh, okay. Back to the drawing board then. That's fine. Thank you.
That's how I always develop everything is rapid fire.
Yes.
And then let it sit and refine it.
Oh, yeah.
And then rapid fire, and then that idea and process it.
Yeah.
And then, navigate it with other people. I mean, that's how my big vision, big picture, abstract thoughts come to life.
Yeah, my friends have gotten very used to me going, you know what I've been thinking about, which actually means I literally just thought of this, but I'm going to share it with you. Eventually I'll like think it out. And so I'll go, you know what I've been thinking about? And I share some idea and they're like, oh, okay. And then, you know, I might explore it some more. But yeah,
most of the time I don't share it with everybody. Mm-hmm. I share it with a couple of people. And that's after I've gotten something bullet pointed.
Yes. Yeah. I have a close inner circle of folks that I share you know what I've been thinking about with, and that's like those are my people that'll tell me like, calm down a little, slow down, speed up. You know, they give me really good advice. You know, they're also the ones that'll be like, okay, you're doing a bit much now. That's a lot. And so that's who I share that with. But then I kind of mull over myself and think about, and I try not to, especially if I have a big idea, I'm always real protective of those. So I'll share the initial kind of seed idea with my friends, and then I'll do whatever work and I kind of make sure it's refined before I'll tell anybody else about it. Smaller things I might share a little bit here and there, but if it's one of my passion projects, I'm like always very protective and like it needs to be a surprise. But you know, I try not to be my own first no, and I don't necessarily take the first no, but I do try to remember to listen and not be arrogant, and that, you know, if somebody's giving me feedback, just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's wrong. So let me hear them out. And maybe even after I hear them out, I'm like, nope, I still disagree with you. I think I'm right. Like, I'm going to go with this. But it helps too, because if you tell me all these issues, maybe I'm not wrong, but maybe those are issues. And so now I can fix those. And when I present it to the next person, those questions and concerns don't even come up. But yeah, it's a balance, you know. You got to have people that you trust that can tell you, actually, no, you're being 100% ridiculous. Like, please wait. Versus people that just don't understand, like, oh, that's not for me. Because I have friends that are like, I don't really like that idea, but like I can understand where you're going with it, and I can see that like it's not my thing, but I can see the value in what you're talking about. The logic is there, and that's important.
So, Michelle, educator, representative, mother.
Yes.
What is one thing that you would like people to know that, or at least plug into, that they can take away from this conversation?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is you have a lot more power than you think. You have a lot more influence than you think. It might not be obvious, and it may not seem like much, but don't throw it away. I made a vote based on one email because that was the only feedback that I got.
Yeah.
That was one person. So one person was able to decide a choice that I made legislatively. And if 20 people had emailed me, 20 people would have been making that decision instead. And so, you know, you might feel like you have a small voice, small role, but it's a role and it matters. And you should leverage it as much as you can. And that's not to say that everything goes your way all the time. You know, the person could have emailed me and maybe my decision-making process was different. Other reps are different. One email is not going to sway them. They have a different process. And things where I have expertise in, one email is not going to sway me. But in that case, it did. And I think people need to remember that one person really, truly can make a difference. I mean, I think about all of the people that have made a difference in your life. They weren't all friends and in a group. It was this one person, this one time, this one incident, and then this other time, this one person, this one incident, and so on and so. But it wasn't like the Harlem Globetrotters came together and all helped you followed along throughout your life. It's just been these individual people. And I think about that, the teachers that I had, you know, that really influenced me, the people that I don't even know. There are people that I will never know their names. I don't remember their names, but I will always remember the interaction that I had with them.
Just like Tulsa Talks slogan, your voice matters.
Absolutely, 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are here to help you discover or develop your passions, how you can use them, and why you exist. How can we help you help others better?